A road crew's horses shouldn't have held up better than horses on a breeding farm, but they did. And a road contractor who noticed that one detail accidentally built a $4.3 billion industry, one that only happens in a handful of places on the entire planet. The road contractor was Karl Rose, and the place was Ocala, Florida. Ocala sits well inland, farther from the coast than almost any city its size in Florida, and it built an identity nobody would have guessed for a landlocked cattle town. The city and the county around it now carry an actual trademark: horse capital of the world. That's not a slogan someone dreamed up in a marketing meeting. Champion racehorses, Kentucky Derby winners, and an industry that moves billions of dollars through one county every year all trace back to a decision made by a man running a road crew long before any of that existed. That man was Karl Rose. He came to Ocala around 1916 to oversee construction of paved roads, and the crews building them didn't need to import material from anywhere else. Marion County sits on limestone close enough to the surface to quarry right where the road was headed, so Rose used it as fill and moved on to the next stretch. The horses working that road crew grazed on the grass growing over the limestone while the men worked through the day. Rose noticed those horses stayed sound. They didn't come up lame the way road crew horses often did on other jobs, and their legs held up under the kind of grinding, repetitive work that breaks most animals down over the course of a season. Anyone else on that crew would have filed it away as luck and kept moving. Rose didn't. And the question nobody asked at the time, why did it work, wouldn't get answered for decades. The exact record of what went through his mind that year hasn't survived. This comes down through local history rather than his own written account. But what happened next did survive, because Rose started buying land of his own instead of just building roads across other people's. Rose turned that hunch into one of the first thoroughbred breeding farms in Florida, maybe the very first, depending on which local account you trust. He wasn't guessing anymore at that point. He'd watched something real happen in a pasture, and he built an actual business on the belief that it would happen again on his own land. It did. In 1956, a horse named Needles, bred and raised on Marion County ground, crossed the finish line first at the Kentucky Derby, the first Florida-bred horse to ever win it. A state nobody associated with serious racehorses was suddenly producing champions out of what had been cattle country a generation earlier. Other breeders noticed the same thing every competitor eventually notices when a rival starts winning for no obvious reason, and they started moving in themselves. Trainers followed the breeders. Veterinarians who specialized in bone and joint work followed the trainers, and auction houses, feed suppliers, and farriers followed all of them into the county. Within a few decades, a single farm had become the anchor of an entire regional industry, even though nobody running any of those operations could explain, in scientific terms, exactly why Marion County kept producing sound, strong horses at a rate the rest of Florida simply couldn't match. They just knew it worked, the same way Rose knew it back when he was still laying road for a living, and that's the part of the story most retellings skip over completely. An industry worth billions took shape for decades around an observation nobody could actually explain. And the explanation, when it finally came, didn't come from a horse expert. It came from the ground. The explanation was sitting under the grass the entire time. Shallow limestone bedrock runs under Marion County in places closer than 50 feet to the surface, and that limestone is made almost entirely of calcium carbonate. Rain and groundwater wear it down slowly, year after year, and as it weathers, it releases calcium straight into the soil sitting above it. That calcium doesn't stop at the dirt. The grass growing in that soil pulls the mineral up through its roots, and a grazing horse takes it in with every single bite it eats through the day. For a young horse still building its skeleton, that steady calcium supply matters more than almost anything else in its diet, more than most owners ever stop to think about. Equine nutrition research puts an actual number on how much it matters. A growing horse's skeleton needs dietary calcium and phosphorus at close to a 2-to-1 ratio, and when that ratio drops much below 1-to-1, real bone problems follow. Weak joints, poor density, the kind of injuries that end a racing career before it ever starts. Marion County's limestone ground was already producing something close to that exact balance, for free, long before anyone in the horse business understood the chemistry behind it. That difference shows up in a breeder's feed bill, since other parts of the country have to add limestone or calcium supplements to their pasture soil by hand just to get close to that same ratio, while Marion County's ground has been doing it for free all along. Rose never ran that analysis, and he had no reason to. He trusted what he saw with his own eyes, and the science that came generations later confirmed he'd been right all along. That same mechanism shows up almost everywhere the world's champion horses come from, and it isn't a coincidence of marketing or branding. It comes down to geology, plain and simple. Kentucky's inner bluegrass region sits on its own layer of phosphatic limestone, and soil testing out of the University of Kentucky confirms what Marion County proves independently on the other side of the country. The soil runs high in calcium and phosphorus, and it feeds a growing horse's bones better than grass grown almost anywhere else in the world. Ireland tells the same story from a different continent entirely. The ground around the Curragh in County Kildare runs heavy with limestone, and the country's steady year-round rainfall leaches calcium straight into the grass without any help from farmers. Ireland has a population under 5 million people, smaller than plenty of individual American cities, and it still produces more thoroughbreds per capita than almost anywhere else on Earth. Same limestone runs through pockets of England and France, which is no coincidence. Put all of those places next to Marion County, and the pattern gets hard to miss. Champion horses keep coming from a short list of regions that all share the same underlying geology, shallow limestone close enough to the surface for a plant's roots to actually reach it. That isn't luck repeating itself by chance in 3 or 4 different countries. That's one mechanism showing up everywhere the rock happens to allow it. So what did one observation on a road crew actually build? Here's the number: $4.3 billion a year across more than 400 thoroughbred farms in a county that started with exactly one. That's according to the American Horse Council's most recent economic impact study. Real money, not a marketing estimate. To see what that looks like in one county, drive to the OBS sales pavilion on a March morning where a yearling can change hands for more than a house costs in most of the country. Tens of thousands of jobs trace back to those farms directly or indirectly, from veterinarians to feed suppliers to the crews who maintain fencing on properties that stretch for miles in every direction. Every bit of that traces back to Rose's original farm, the way a river traces back to a single spring. Land gets zoned around it, and water and development decisions get made with it in mind for decades at a time. But that same limestone is running a second operation underground. That same limestone, the one building world-class bones, is also hollowing out cavities a few dozen feet under the same pastures that raise champions. It sits close enough to the surface to feed the grass, and that closeness is what puts Marion County inside what geologists call Sinkhole Alley. Water moves through limestone the way it moves through ground everywhere else in Florida, except here it slowly dissolves the rock instead of feeding it. Those cavities don't announce themselves before they collapse. The ground holds until it doesn't, and hydrogeological studies of the area have found a large share of Marion County sitting in high-risk territory for exactly that reason. It's the same shallow limestone and the same closeness to the surface, only running in the opposite direction now. Same rock, opposite outcome, depending entirely on which side of it you happen to be standing on when it moves. If you live on this same ground, drop a comment. I want to hear what's happening under your street. And if that kind of hidden machinery is what you watch for, you're in the right place. Subscribe. The ground under Marion County never changed. We already covered what happens when that same Florida limestone gives out without warning. Carl Rose didn't know he was building a $4 billion industry on a geology lesson. He just saw the opportunity and bought the land. Subscribe to Florida Empire. There's a lot more Florida standing on ground exactly like this.